Good afternoon, Defenders. This is Sergeant Henry, the Master Resiliency Trainer for your battery. And today we're going to go ahead and conduct a virtual MRT class. The topic for today is icebergs, and we're going to watch a quick video up front so that we can better understand the iceberg model itself.
Today on Verbal to Visual, I'd like to share with you a visual metaphor that you might find useful. One to add to your bank of possible diagrams to use in the future. That visual metaphor is the iceberg, which, when drawn from the side like this, makes clear that what's seen from the outside is just a small percentage of everything else that's going on underneath. What makes this metaphor so useful and widely applicable is the fact that no matter what you look at, there is so much more going on behind the scenes compared to what you see from the outside. And diving down into the depths of what's going on underneath is worthwhile. That's where the interesting things live, the things that contribute to whatever is seen on the surface. For example, consider any individual action that someone takes. Underlying that action is a whole lot of personal history, from things that happened previously that day, earlier in the week, earlier in the year, and even things that were formed from childhood experiences. You can't deeply understand an individual action without exploring at least some of those things that live below the surface.
I hope that video gave you a little bit more of a good picture as to what we're talking about when we're discussing icebergs. As far as icebergs are concerned, for the resiliency program and MRT as a whole, the way that we would represent the iceberg is, if you see this water line here, that is basically your level of awareness. Anything that's above the water line, that small part of the iceberg, that's going to be what you are physically aware of, basically your heat of the moment thought that happens in an event. Anything that's below the water line here, that's going to be your beliefs and your values. Your beliefs and your values are often outside of your awareness, and they are represented by the bottom half of this iceberg. When we're talking about detecting icebergs as a skill, what we want to use this for is to identify and evaluate the core beliefs and the core values that may fuel out of proportion emotions and reactions. So the values that we have, they may cause us to react both positively and negatively in a stronger manner than we normally would to certain activating events. The primary competency that we're using this skill to build is self-awareness. By learning how to detect our icebergs, we can change them if they're causing counterproductive emotions or reactions, or reinforce them if they're producing positive emotions or reactions. The ultimate goal for this skill is to build your awareness to icebergs so that you have more control over your emotions and reactions when an iceberg has been activated. So to understand this skill, we need to kind of talk about the difference between heat of the moment thoughts and icebergs. So as far as heat of the moment thoughts go, they're on the surface and they're always in your awareness, and we can easily tune into them. They also come and go. So it's just, if a situation happens, the very first thing that pops into your mind would be what your heat of the moment thought is. An iceberg is a core value or a core belief. So to break those down, if we're talking about core values, you can see the slide says what you aspire to, but what you can really consider is how things should be. And core beliefs, it says what you believe to be true of yourself, others, in the world. And you can think about that as how things are. Heat of the moment thoughts are what we typically get if you remember when we did the ATC model, because they're at the top of your mind and they're easy to identify. Icebergs develop over time and are typically rules or strongly held beliefs that you have as a person. They include both core values and core beliefs. We talked about values and goal setting, but now we're going to take a look at the values and beliefs more deeply. Icebergs also, don't consider them to always be bad. You can have good core values and core beliefs that you might not want to get rid of, but be aware of so that you can reinforce those. So an example of that is, I have a core value that all people should be treated fairly and equally. So it affects my heat of the moment thoughts with productive emotions and reactions. So that's an iceberg that me personally, I would want to reinforce so that it helps develop my relationships and it helps develop my thought processes as I move forward as a leader. Here we can see some examples of icebergs. So for these, there's many different ones. All different people have very different icebergs. So a lot of it has to do with how you were raised. It has to do with the people that were around you, the culture that you grew up in. But the gist of it that you need to get is that these affect the way that you might handle a situation or interpret a certain situation depending on where you were raised and what things that you believe are most important to you. For example, if you look at you should respect your elders. So let's take the current situation that we're going through right now. The grocery stores are a madhouse. If you see somebody being rude to an elderly person, you don't in your mind think you should respect your elders, but you might get like an instant jolt of being angry, and it might force you to have a reaction where you go up and you basically yell at the person that was being disrespectful to the elders. So understanding that maybe that specific instance isn't your heat of the moment thought, but that your heat of the moment thought and your emotions and reactions are driven by the fact that you have this core belief that you should respect your elders. Knowing and understanding your icebergs and being able to use this skill to detect them can definitely help you control your emotions and reactions when you run into those scenarios that may be triggering an iceberg that you have that's not 100% in your awareness. So some examples of when you might need to detect an iceberg: your emotions or reactions are out of proportion to what you're thinking in the heat of the moment. Your emotion or reaction surprises or confuses you. There's a TC disconnect. We'll talk about that in a second. And then you notice strong thinking trap patterns. So as far as your emotions or reactions being out of proportion, you can think about this in terms of, imagine you had an argument with somebody that you have a strong relationship with, and it's a mild argument, and the first thing that comes to your mind is, yeah, I really wish we hadn't fought. But then your emotions and reactions are you immediately jump to intense anger and you start yelling at that person. Like, you may have an iceberg that caused you in that particular argument, depending on what you're talking about, to actually jump to a stronger reaction and have stronger emotions about a situation that maybe you didn't really feel that seriously about. As far as TC disconnect goes, to think about it in terms of TC disconnect, you have to remember when we went through ATC. And when we went through ATC, you had different thought themes. And those thought themes drove certain emotions and reactions that you would have. And if, let's say, you were in the same argument and the person made you extremely angry, but your initial emotions was that you were depressed and you felt lonely, and then your reaction was that you left and you went away from that person, even though you initially were very angry in the situation. As far as strong thinking patterns and thinking trap patterns go, one of the main ones that you'll see is if every time you're in the same situation, you get that same thinking trap pattern. So imagine that you are having a reoccurring situation at work, and all you can do is think them, and you're trying to basically place that blame all on the other person. You might want to take a look and see if you have an iceberg for that particular situation, because you could have an iceberg that people can't be trusted. We're going to go ahead and watch a video now. This video depicts a situation that may be similar to some that you've had in your own personal life, where it might be a good idea to use this method to detect an iceberg, and then we're going to discuss it.
I'm running late, so I'll call you when I get out.
Okay. All right. Oh, hey, wait. There you go.
Thanks. Love you.
Love you too.
You have got to be kidding me. something, Kevin? Why is the tank on E? Seriously. Oh no. That's what you give me. Oh no. Thank you for that. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. No, you know what? Just stand there. Stand there like you always do, and I'll do it. I'll handle it. I'll handle it like I handle everything else in this relationship. So Kevin and I got into this huge argument this morning. Really? Why? Well, I'm trying to get out to the gym. I'm running behind as it is. I get in the car, and he leaves the tank completely empty. Why would he do that? He knows you take the car in the morning. That's what I said. Exactly. Why? You know, it's probably the same reason why. He never remembers to put down the toilet seat. That's ridiculous. Or why he never buys the right groceries, even after I take my time and I write out these nice long lists for him. Why can't men just follow simple instructions? It's like he doesn't even consider me sometimes. He makes me so angry, I could literally rip my own hair out.
Hey, you okay? You seemed really worked up back there.
I guess. Kevin forgot to put gas in the tank this morning again, and I just lost it. I mean, he just makes me so mad sometimes.
Really, what about that made you so angry?
I don't know, it's just that it would have been thoughtful of him to fill up the tank for once.
Seems like a pretty big fight over a gas tank. What's really bothering you?
Well, that's just it. Like, I know the gas tank doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but he used to do those little things for me like that all the time. And now he doesn't.
So you feel like he doesn't do the little things for you anymore. What about that bothers you so much?
I feel like he doesn't try anymore. Like he takes me for granted. And he is my husband. And when you love someone, you should make an effort.
Do you really feel like he doesn't make the effort? What does he say about that?
I'm not sure that we really even talked about it. I just kind of flew off the handle. Maybe I should have an actual conversation with him.
Yeah, I think you should.
Hey.
Hey.
Ames, look, I'm sorry. I just didn't realize that.
I really overreacted this morning, and I'm sorry.
I was gonna put gas in the car, but I forgot.
It's okay, really. I mean, it's not even about the gas tank anyways, right? I just think that we take each other for granted sometimes.
I don't want you to feel that way. Dang. You know, you always be my baby cakes, right?
Okay.
Come on, let's go talk about this over dinner. I will make you whatever you want.
Really?
Oh yeah.
So I'm sure everybody can agree from the video that maybe the emotions and the reactions of that soldier were probably a little bit extreme for the given the situation that happened. So you're all familiar with this. We've used this before. This is the ATC model. So the ATC model is used when you're trying to detect if you have any of those emotions or reactions that are too high, or you have a TC disconnect where maybe you are having different reactions from the thought theme that you might have in that certain circumstance. And we'll use this ATC model to determine if we should try and find out if we have an iceberg. So to break down the ATC model really quick again, your AE is your activating event. That's just your 5 W's. So you need to leave your initial thoughts out of it. That's just the event. So in particular for this video, the activating event was that the husband didn't put gas in the gas tank. And then for your thoughts, that's your heat of the moment thought. So in regards to this video, the heat of the moment thought was, I'll just do it myself like I do everything else myself. The consequences were that they got into a fight and there was a rift in their relationship. The emotions that were displayed was anger, and the reactions was that they got into a fight and then the soldier left. More than likely, the thought theme that would fall in line with this is trespass, and she feels like her husband's lack of attention has hurt her in some way. So using the ATC model, it helps us better understand exactly what happened in that situation and how we played a role in that situation. And as you can see, her emotions and reactions may have been a lot higher than she normally would have wanted them to be in that situation. So at this point, that's when she would go ahead and try and detect to see if she has an iceberg. Once you've conducted the ATC model and then you realize that you may have an iceberg that you need to detect, you're going to want to use what questions and not why questions. The reason for that is that what questions tend to force the person that's being asked that question to dig a little bit deeper, whereas why questions keep you on the surface with your answers. So you saw in the video that the service member was doing PT at the gym with her friend, and then her friend came up, and as her friend asked her those what questions, it kind of forced her to reevaluate the situation and reevaluate how she reacted in it. And then it brought her to the realization that she might have an iceberg where she feels like the little things in life are really important, and that those are the things and those are the needs that she needs taken care of by her husband. And that's what caused her emotions and reaction to be out of context to the situation. So some examples of what questions are: what is the most upsetting part of that for me? What does that mean to me? What is the worst part of that for me? And then, assuming that is true, what part of that was so upsetting? So in order to do this, detect icebergs, you need to have somebody else to be there and ask you those questions, so that it can force you to get below the surface and start looking to see if you have that core value or that core belief that is affecting how you react in that situation. As you're going through this model, once you've identified your iceberg, you need to think about, as we discussed earlier in the video, if you still believe or value that iceberg, and consider whether or not the iceberg is overly rigid in some situations. Think about whether your iceberg is getting in your way in some situations, and what specific actions you would take if you want to change that iceberg. And then think about what you can do to change your emotions or reactions to make these types of situations go better for yourself and others. And think about whether there are more direct conversations you need to have with someone and what that conversation is about. So when you're considering, just remember at the beginning of the video, I talked about the fact that you could have a positive iceberg, and that positive iceberg could greatly enhance your reaction to certain activating events, and that helps improve your relationship. Because most of these skills for MRT, we're a people business in the Army, and we need to be able to work together, and we need to be able to deal with conflict, and we need to be able to overcome any differences that we have. And this isn't just as the Army, it goes with your family too. You have conflicts with the loved ones that you have in your life, and these skills are designed to help you. But if you have a positive one, you might be positively reinforcing those good scenarios. So that's why you want to really take a look at that iceberg and decide whether or not you value that iceberg, what that value means to you, and whether or not you want to keep it or figure out ways to address the fact that you may have an emotion or reaction or that is out of context in the activating event. Some key principles to take away for this detecting iceberg skill. The aha moment. So the aha moment, that's when you were asking those what questions and you finally get to a point in that series of questions where you have a belief or something that comes out of you that helps to explain your emotions and your reactions in that situation if they were more than what they should have been during that activating event. Understanding that icebergs can create thinking traps. We talked about it earlier in the video, where you might have an iceberg that people can't be trusted. So you have a constant thinking trap pattern where it's them, and you're constantly looking to blame everybody else for any situation that arises. And then asking what and not why questions, because what questions lead to depth. You're digging down into your subconscious beliefs and core values that may be affecting your reaction in that situation. And why questions tend to lead to defensiveness, because why questions, basically, if you keep asking somebody why over and over again, they're just reliving that emotion and reaction that they had rather than digging down deeper. Self-awareness, again, is the primary target for detect icebergs, and becoming more aware of those values and those beliefs that don't pop into your mind but that affect your subconscious thought when you're dealing with an activating event can help improve your relationships drastically with other people. Normally at this point in the class, I would have you pair up with somebody, but I challenge you to, if you live in the barracks, get with a battle buddy and practice these skills if you're having an issue or you've had an activating event where you didn't think that your emotions and reactions met the need of the situation. Maybe they were too much, maybe they weren't enough. Maybe you had a TC disconnect, and even though you felt like you were trespassed on, you felt lonely and you felt like you needed to separate yourself from the situation rather than becoming angry like you would normally expect. And if you're at home, I would challenge you to try these skills with your family members. Maybe you've had an activating event that you can talk through. As you saw at the end of the video, it did greatly help and benefit the relationship between the service member and her husband, and talking through those what questions and finding that core belief helped her better understand why she reacted in that situation and helped them come together better as a couple in the end. Anyway, this concludes my class. I hope you all are staying safe, wash your hands, and we'll talk again soon.